Thank you for joining us. Bob, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad you joined us today.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, so why don't you give us a little background? I know that, it's interesting because you have kind of you have a lot of responsibilities at work, right? You have a lot of responsibilities on your shoulder, had to make a lot of big time decisions, and then um it's different when it comes to family, isn't it?
It really is, and it's a matter of finding the balance to do it all. At some levels, I feel sometimes I felt in the past a lot about having the sticks plates on the stick, trying to keep them all moving at the same time.
Right. Were you successful?
Well, I think it's required a lot of patience that I didn't used to think I had, but patience over a period of time. But the results, where I am today, it's been well worth it, and I've got to meet a lot of people and hopefully influence me and influence them at the same time over the years.
I believe that's true. I know that you've influenced a lot of people in this neck of the woods. Before I get into family dynamics and addiction, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you came to even be talking at this summit?
Okay, well, thank you. I have a few children, one in particular, my son, and he's the one principally in terms of the relevance of this topic that my I have a deceased wife that passed in 2001, and my son was about 11 years old at the time, and he we adopted my son, but at his infant, so he's very dear to me, and miracle adoption at the time. And so there's some biology there for him as well. But over time, he continued to start experiencing depression and anxiety. He would tell you himself he had a good childhood, and then his mom passed and things changed. And so it's taken time for him to come to grips with a lot of that. So that was 2001. Flash forward, Michael is his name. He had a lot of successes ultimately, but not without a lot of treatment. He'd been to a couple of different places. He hit a stride after some real troubles and started doing very well and did well in school. And then he got accepted to medical school, but that didn't work out. COVID had a little bit to do with it, but really anxiety and depression all kind of kicked in a big way, as did his addiction, returned again in spite of having a period of sobriety. So he was in and out of places over a long period of time, but ultimately, first a lot of success down in Delray, and then came home to Dallas, is where I live, and found a program, and he's doing enormously well. But it's been a journey of about 13 years.
Right. Right. And there were definitely, it was funny because I just got off with we're talking with Jessica about that you know, the debilitating depression and anxiety that often accompanies addiction. And like Darren and I talked about earlier, we're not really taught that it's okay to not feel okay.
Right.
We don't need to
That's
feel okay and happy and joyous and free all the time. That's just not life on life's terms.
that's true, and I had to learn. I myself don't have not really, fortunately, struggled much with depression or anxiety, but my son did, and tracing back some roots, it appears some of that was biological, and so it was difficult early on for me to fully come to grips with the significance of that. And so it was a learning process, as opposed to saying, can't you just snap out of this? But when your loved one is telling you that they just can't find joy in life, and they get afraid of even coming out of their apartment to go to the store, and starts isolating and all those sorts of things. And for in my son's case, it led to addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about those family dynamics, how it can disrupt your family,
Yeah.
when something like this, whether it's mental health or addiction or both, leading
Yeah.
to sometimes codependency,
Yeah.
enabling strained relationships, right? All of that.
Yeah, that's so true, especially the codependency, and of course, as a parent of a loved one, and in a world in my business where I'm a person that fixes things, it's not something you can control or fix, and so. When I say I didn't have anxiety, I will say I had some anxiety along the way, and at moments in time with my son, and I had to learn over time that there are things I couldn't control. The Serenity Prayer has been sort of my
Oh
my
yeah.
daily go to in terms of accepting the things I cannot change and change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so in the changing of things I could, it was trying to help along the way relative to Michael's addiction and getting the right help, frankly, getting the right help for myself, because it's very true. The enabling part, frankly,
Mhm.
because of Michael's history, I always wanted to protect him. And so I enabled him. I had one therapist that started talking about disenabling, that you do so much to protect someone, you may send a signal they can't do things themselves. So there was a lot of things over time that we just had to work on in terms of the relationship, which candidly was strained,
Mhm.
but never gave up on him, and had a lot of support along the way.
What can you talk to parents about, if they're in that boat where their relationship with their child is strained? Maybe they are enabling a little bit. You know, what can they hold on to while they're going through these things to hold on to hope?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's difficult for especially parents, at least in my case, because if one of the things you do is you focus on what woulda, coulda, shoulda. What if I had done this differently? What if I done that differently? I learned over time that you don't know that even if you had done anything differently, you'd be in a different spot. And you also learn, try to come to grips with the fact that you do the best you can with the information you have that you're dealing with at the present time. And so trying to and understanding that you're not powerful enough to control things.
Right.
Many of a person dealing with their addiction, it's in the case of anxiety and depression. Michael did have a psychiatrist that had medication, but it was also behavioral things that really had to be on Michael with providing support. And so we had a lot of ups and downs, points at which I told him, look, this is it. It finally got to, this is it. I'll support you in your recovery, but I will not support you in your drug and alcohol use. And
Right.
basically, ultimately coming to grips with pulling out the safety net, because there was always a safety net. It seemed that where Michael fell. So those are sort of some matters that I went through. But I'm going to tell you, it's also coming to grips with your fears. I would walk on eggshells about what to say to Michael, because I didn't really want to make his depression and anxiety worse. However, I came to grips that, again, there's behavioral matters that he just really had to continue to progress in dealing with himself. And he's got some good programs that ultimately got him there. But it was several relapses in a lot of places that he was in the meantime. So it was a journey. It's been a
Sure,
journey.
sure. And one of the resources you mentioned was the full version or the Serenity Prayer. I want to read the full version. It's really funny to me because in 12-step meetings they always use this prayer, but they don't know who it's by. A lot of them think that it's by someone anonymous, but it's by Ronhold Niebuhr, and it's the full prayer is this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy in the life with him forever. So I
Yes.
just wanted to share that with everybody because the full version is quite expounded from the three lines, which are very powerful because the wisdom to know the difference is a hard lesson to learn.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that brings me to our next point. You mentioned earlier another really helpful mechanism is family therapy.
Yes, and that's valuable. In my case, my son had an individual therapist. The family therapist was for both of us, but as much as anything, that was a line of communication. There's been a line of communication for me, and I've had a couple of family therapists along the way, but it's absolutely been crucial. The addiction impacts the entire family, and while I was principally working with Michael, my wife, my current wife Janet, she also it was kind of transference of any anxiety or whatever I felt she took on herself, and so
Mhm.
you learn that you have responsibilities not just to the person who's addicted, but also to all of the rest of the families and friends, and in my case, work and other places as well. So the family therapy really helped my son and I to find improved ways to communicate. Frankly, a vehicle for um, uh, getting things out very candidly
Mhm.
between my son and me, and the therapist helping in connection with that. And so it was of enormous benefit to both of us along the way. And the family therapy, not only just the therapist in the meeting, but I've participated in a number of different family groups.
Mhm.
And I've learned so much in terms of that, and it's been really key. I mean, you kind of feel isolated when this happens, that you're the only one that's really in this world. And then you start opening up with people from all different, cultures, all different stages of life. And I've kind of typically said, I learned that we're all different and we're all the same, all at the same time. We may have different issues that got us to where we were in family therapy, but we really are all have the same thing. So the group therapy allowed us to talk among each other about what our biggest fears were, and then you learn a lot of people have same issues. One thing I learned that I remember is addiction does not discriminate. It can hit anyone, regardless of where you are, what your stature in life or anything else is. And I've,
Mhm.
had the opportunity to have met a lot of people in a cross melting pot, if you will, of individuals over time, who have shared valuable things with me, and hopefully me with them. So that too has been an important part of dealing with recovery.
Yeah, and I would think too, I mean, one of the things that you did so well, maybe like the duck where you can see the duck sitting nice and the feet are underneath doing like this, but on the surface at least, you did a really good job at creating a healthy home environment, a supportive, healthy home environment, and I think that in itself helps heal the relationship, right?
Right. I hope that it did. I think that it did. It's had results. And the thing is, the loved one, you find how deep the shame is that they carry. In my son's case, I'm absolutely aware that he felt many times that he was letting everybody down. So he was dealing with that, and that prevented him, frankly, from communicating as much. And again, that's where family therapy helped bring out a lot of that to deal with what was shame. To ultimately, it took a long time, but ultimately you get to where very candid, open conversations, and including his making amends to everyone that he realized that he had hurt over time, which was a key point. That took a while because it was for
Yeah,
him, it was kind of admitting where his shortcomings were,
right.
uh, where we all have shortcomings and we all have failed and we're all sinners. And so,
We all fall
yeah,
short, right?
and we all fall short. And
Yeah.
ultimately, and he's kind of gotten in a group where there's a big brotherhood and of individuals in the same situation. And it's contributed greatly to bringing him out of that. But family therapy was a key part of a lot of that progress.
Yeah, I know that it was. And another thing that I know that you guys did really well, you mentioned it earlier about how, addiction is a family disease and it doesn't just impact the person that is struggling, it affects like a ripple, those people around. How how did you set healthy boundaries, or how did you even learn about setting boundaries and knowing how to help the individual and you as loved ones escape harm, any more harm?
Right. Well, certainly, working the 12 steps with Michael, once he really took it seriously and did that, kind of both of us working through all of that was helpful in our success. But boundaries are really crucial uh, uh, in terms of protecting everyone in the relationship. And so, the loved ones that we all deserve a life ourselves, and we have obligations to other people. So that's I go back to first setting the boundaries of I would support my son in his recovery, but not in drug and alcohol addiction, and frankly, not having a particular safety net, and then having some kind of rules of the road, if you will. He can't just drive up and walk in our house. He has to, yeah. And one thing I had to come to grip with was very important. That through family therapy that helped me with the boundary setting is I kept thinking, my son's now 34, but I kept talking to him like he was my child, and he is my child. But it was sort of hit me one day. The family therapist says you need to have adult conversations and treat your son like an adult. And I realized, wow, that was where I stepped in, would do things for him. And my part of my son's um, among many things. But one of the things was just taking care of the things you have to take care of in life, the have tos. Make sure your car insurance, if you have a car, is renewed. Make sure you have health insurance. Make sure you are responsible and you show up for appointments. And if you don't show up for appointments and I'm paying the bill, then you need to pay for that bill yourself. Just a number of different matters of establishing boundaries so that you both have respect for one another, but frankly, helping my son, in his case, with his own behavior of
Mhm.
what his responsibilities are, that he had a level of control that I shouldn't and wouldn't control.
It's funny you said that because I laugh because there's a story my husband tells too, but his sister would call him and let him know where the roadblocks were on the road. Like so hey, just a heads up, they're getting people at Shelton, and
Mhm. Yeah.
and she didn't realize until she hit Al-Anon that well, those lack of boundaries are called enabling, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And frankly, it was when I go back to what I mentioned earlier, it was pulling out the safety net, and explaining to Michael, part of responsibility as a parent is to make sure that their loved one can independently survive as well. And so pulling out the safety net where it felt like no matter what I do, my dad will bail me out of problems. And it took a while for me to do the ultimate, but I finally did when I, just acknowledged, look, I can't help you here. If you have to, you'll have to go sleep on the street or sleep in your car. In this case, he still had access to a car. And I that seemed to be a turning point. It was a combination of a lot of things, but it seemed like when he actually realized, what his choices were in terms of taking care of himself, he's made terrific progress.
Yeah, I know he has. I'm so happy about that. Look, as we're wrapping up here, can you tell our audience that might be listening, that it's easier said than done a lot of times to set those boundaries, and to go to therapy and to do all these things when you might feel like, well, I'm not the one that's got the problem. My kid's the one that's got the problem. Um, but really what's underneath that is what you talked about earlier, the fear, right? Let's face everything and recover or forget everything and run.
Right.
And what can they do when they're afraid that their loved one's going to die or go to jail or do permanent damage to themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I lived for a long time in fear of the phone call I might get, or waking up in the middle of the night and checking my text messages. And the one thing you do with your loved one is to continue to tell them you have someone you can reach out to. You have your therapist. You have me. When you get before you make a bad decision, and individuals don't always do that because of the shame or et cetera of doing that. However, you just stick with that, and in my case, as I say, treat them as an adult, and uh, just mainly continue, frankly, to have faith, and ultimately for me to come closer. And for me, all of this. It's been a long road. Never was I intended on abandoning. And frankly, it's been a huge, significant, important learning process for me individually, as
Yeah.
difficult as it was,
Yeah.
and has been. And I realize Michael lives with anxiety and depression, and we all know that folks, live one day at a time in terms of relapse, but really just focus on today, not worry so much about the past, and then the following day, deal with the next day. And those certain things that I've kind of learned to live by.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bob, for everything. Bob has graciously offered a guide called Navigating Family Relationships. And I'm going to announce this in the main room as well. You don't want to miss his VIP gift. It's Jim's sister, Marianne, who's Al-Anon, me and Bob talking about family relationships. This is going to be a packed hour of answering your questions, burning or otherwise, with three people who are pretty well versed with this topic. So be sure to grab that VIP to get Bob's free gift. Bob's VIP gift and Bob's free gift, Navigating Family Relationships, is on the dashboard. So I will see you guys back in the main room.
Thank you all, and God
Thank
bless.
you,
Thank you.
Bob. Thank you, everybody, for being here.